Muhammad and his followers had arrived in Medina penniless, and although they were now free of the daily persecution they had faced in Mecca, their enemies still sought to destroy them. In tribal Arabia, vengeance was a very powerful motive. The Muslims in Medina now faced the threat to their very existence. The much more powerful Meccans who had driven Muhammad out persecuted his followers by taking their property and their very means of survival, were still plotting to destroy them. Muhammad had to find a way over their enmity and fast. Then, according to Muslim tradition, Muhammad received a series of revelations urging him and his followers to fight back against those who had expelled them from their homes. The exact interpretation of these verses has remained highly controversial ever since. Some have seen them as the validation for a just war, the occasional necessity to fight in self-defense, whereas others have seen them as a justification for the killing of anyone who doesn't accept Muhammad's message.
The revelation that is in the Quran in chapter 2, verse 191, and again at 218, that persecution is worse than slaughter. So in other words, if the Quraysh are persecuting you, it's all right for you to slaughter them, which leads to a kind of an elasticity of Islamic morality without any absolute other than what is good for Islam is good, and any kind of moral principle otherwise can be set aside. And so that as the basis of warfare, and also Muhammad's oft-repeated dictum, war is deceit, which is found in numerous hadith, it's unfortunately lays the groundwork for a culture that is often quite martial and belligerent toward its neighbors and others.
The permission is only this in the Quran. You are under oppression, the people are attacking you, you have the right to resist. So this is why from the mainstream classical legal Islamic tradition, it's the defensive, what we call the defensive jihad, which is you are oppressed, you can resist this oppression in the name of your rights. So all the people and some of the Muslim groups who are using this verse to say we can kill and this is a carte blanche for war are wrong. This is not what is said in the verse. The verse is they are attacking you. You have the right to resist, because at the end of the day it's a question of survival.
Muhammad and his followers were engaged in a battle for survival. He saw these revelations as justification to attack the Quraysh where it hurt most, their caravan trade with the outside world. During March 624, the Prophet heard about an exceptionally large Quraysh caravan returning from Syria back to Mecca. He decided to capture the caravan in the desert. For their part, the Quraysh had anticipated Muhammad might do this, and so diverted the caravan away from Medina and instead sent an army to intercept him. The two sides met here at a remote watering hole in the desert called Badr.
The two forces, the force coming from Mecca and Muhammad's force coming from Medina, meet up at the well of Badr. And there is a confrontation that probably only lasts a few hours between certainly less than 1,000 people, probably 300 or 400 on Muhammad's side, possibly up to 900 on the Meccan side. We're always told that the Meccans are more numerous than the Muslims, but we've no real method of knowing whether that's a historical reality or not.
What was actually happening in the battle between Mecca and Medina, in a sense, the Prophet in exile at Medina, was an ideological battle. We think, we don't know for certain because it didn't happen, we suspect that if the Meccans had won, they would have exterminated the heretics as they saw them, the Muslims, because they were too much of a threat.
The Meccans were defeated, and the threat to Medina was temporarily lifted. Round one in this struggle for dominance between Mecca and Medina went to Muhammad. By modern standards, this was hardly a battle, more a skirmish. But its significance was massive. It was the first time that Muhammad and his followers had gone to war in the name of God, and they were jubilant at this extraordinary victory over the Quraysh. Muhammad's reputation throughout Arabia was hugely improved. But for the Quraysh, this spelt shame, which could not be forgotten or forgiven. This humiliation would have to be avenged.
It meant that Muhammad's prestige in Medina, where he just recently arrived, of course, shot up, and also the booty was extremely useful for rewarding his followers in Medina. Having gifts to give and so on made his position much, much stronger.
For Muhammad and his followers, the victory at Badr had a deep religious meaning. It was a vindication of the faith that has sustained him and his followers for now nearly 14 years. They saw it as God's approval for their new movement. Ever since, Muslims have seen this early victory as a divine deliverance, comparable to the Israelites' deliverance from Egypt at the Red Sea.